off if they're not there. So in the chat box, what are the first 2 steps of the scientific method that we've talked about so far? We talked about 1 last week, step 2 last week, and we talked about step 1 2 weeks ago. Hypothesis was last week. That's step 2. Good, Angel. And then Angelina, observations and hypothesis. Yep, good. So somewhere at the beginning of your notes, write down the bell word and answer. Observations and hypothesis. Good, Paula. Are the first 2 steps of the scientific method that we've talked about so far. What does the root word experere mean? That is the root word of experiment. It's your vocabulary word. It's been on a few of your attendance quizzes. So in the chat box. Good, Shayla. To test, yes. To try or to test. Experiment is just to try something, to test something. In a scientific setting, you're testing your hypothesis. And then describe a science experiment you guys have done in school. You all been in school for at least 8 years now, maybe more. What are some science experiments you guys have done over the years? In your science classes or at home or anywhere, really. Think back to your science class last year. Most of you are in 8th grade last year. What kind of experiments did you do?
When I was in 4th grade, we used to do the little bean science experiments, and we would see like what makes them grow like faster.
Okay.
Like the soil or the cotton.
Very good. Growing beans in different environments, that's an experiment. Anyone else remember anything they did last year?
I think this was in 1st grade when we cleaned pennies to see what cleaning product could clean the pennies the best.
Good. What worked the best? Do you remember?
I think, I'm not sure. This was like 8 years ago. I think it was the alcohol or laundry detergent or something like that.
One of those worked the best? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for speaking. I love it. What else? Anyone else remember their experiments? Okay.
Sorry. I remember in 5th grade, one of our science experiments, well, mine was which meat rot faster, the McDonald's one or the meat you get at Stater Brothers.
Oh, and which one rotted faster?
I think it was the one you got at Stater Brothers. I think that one rotted faster.
Yeah, McDonald's puts a lot of preservatives in their meat, so that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Good, very good. All right. All right. As a quick side note, your title page is different than mine. Mine has a few different, but I want to know, I have a poll actually. Who is the scientist out of these 4 pictures? What do you think? And you can choose more than one. Out of these 4 pictures, who do you guys think the scientist is? Who's your typical person that you think of when you think of scientist? Okay, I'll give you guys about 10 more seconds to answer. All right. All right, so typically, most of you put C was the scientists. And I will tell you that A, B, and D are actual real scientists. C is a picture I got off of Google when I Googled the word scientist. And then A, B, and D, those are actually Twitter profile pictures of actual scientists. I thought you guys might find that interesting. So scientists, you don't have to write this slide down. This slide we're just talking about. Scientists can look like anyone. There are scientists of all shapes, sizes, races, genders, orientations. One of your assignments this week actually includes finding a scientist that you identify with. We're going to do a little bit of cyber stalking this week. Naved, we were taking notes. So experiment. One of the most important features of a hypothesis from last week is that it needs to be testable. Those tests in a scientific setting are called experiments. And I will wait a few minutes for you to fill in the blanks. However, I'm not going to wait too long to move on because you should already have this written down. Naved, you can't see my screen? Let's see. Let me stop and reshare. Can you guys see my screen? Give me a yes or no in the chat box if you guys can see my screen. Okay, most everyone can see my screen. Naved, can you see my screen or is it still black? Desiree, that's okay. This recording will be on Canvas later if you need. Okay, that's fine, Naved. All right, parts of an experiment. There are three main parts that every experiment has to have to be considered an actual scientific experiment. We called them factors up until now. We talked about factor 1 and factor 2, and we put them in a relationship and a hypothesis. However, their actual science name is variable. In science, we have to have a fancy name for everything. So our fancy name for factors of an experiment are variables. The first is called the dependent variable. And to pick out the variables from an experiment, you have to ask certain questions. And the dependent variable is always the easiest to pick out, or it should be the easiest to pick out. And the first question to ask when reading about an experiment is what is being measured? Whatever is being measured, that part is called the dependent variable. And there can be more than one. So we're going to practice. Our next slide is reading through an experiment and picking out the dependent variable of that experiment. All right, so this is our example. You're going to have 3 slides with our example picking out the different variables, but you only need to write it down once. So 2 plants are grown using 2 different types of soil. Soil is a fancy name for dirt. The scientist grows both plants for 6 weeks, gives them the same amount of water and sunlight. They measure the height of the plant every week. So, first question you need to ask yourself is what is being measured? And we are going to do a poll to see if you guys can pick it out. So from this experiment, what is being measured? Different types of soil, the water and the sunlight, or the height of the plant. There's 3 different factors. We're starting off with the dependent variable. Just a little hint, the word measure is in the actual experiment. And the other thing about a dependent variable is you have no control over it. So which one of those things would you not have control over? Good, so most of you got it. The height of the plant is the dependent variable. That's the thing the scientists are measuring in the end result that they're measuring, and also the thing that the scientists don't have any kind of control over. You cannot control a plant and tell the plant you have to grow 6 inches. That plant grows however much it wants to grow. Oh, there's your results. So what is being measured? The height of the plant. So the height of the plant is the dependent variable. We abbreviate it to DV because dependent variable is always just a mouthful to say. Viviana, that's okay. There'll be more polls. All right. Moving on, the next variable or factor, that's called the independent variable. We abbreviate that IV. So in science, there's always groups of things being compared or put into categories. This is something the scientist changes on purpose to be able to compare one thing to another. And the part that scientists are changing on purpose is called the independent variable. So the scientist does have control over this. Scientists group things into categories, pit one category against the other and see how well each does. All right, same example. 2 plants are grown using 2 different types of soil. Scientist grows both plants for 6 weeks, give them the same amount of water and sunlight. They measure the height of the plant every week. So now we're going to pick out the independent variable. What is being compared or put into categories? Now we already picked out the dependent variable. The dependent variable is the height. So nobody should be picking height for the independent variable. So what categories are the plants being put into? We have 2 plants. What is the scientist changing about each of them? What is our independent variable? Or our IV? Good. So most of you got it. The different types of soil is what the scientist is changing about each set of plants. He's dividing the plants into 2 groups, saying soil A and soil B, and we're going to see how much they grow. So they're changing those categories on purpose between the 2 plants. Good. So the 2 different types of soil is the independent variable in this experiment. And you guys are going to be picking out these variables all week. You're going to have these on your attendance quizzes. You're going to have these on your check for understanding quiz at the end of the week. So you got to understand the difference between these variables. All right, last but not least, the controlled variable. To remain a fair test of something, only one factor should be manipulated or changed, which is the IV, the independent variable. All of the rest of the factors in the experiment should stay the same or constant. The parts of the experiment that will always remain constant are called the controlled variables or the constants. You'll see it both ways. Constant can be an adjective when it's describing something, or it can be a noun when we just say these things are constants. All right. Same experiment. 2 plants are grown using 2 different types of soil. Scientist grows both plants for 6 weeks, gives them the same amount of water and sunlight. They measure the height of the plant every week. We got 3 variables. We already picked out 2 of them. So which one would be the controlled variable? Which one stays the same for both plants? Or which ones? We've already chosen 2 of these. This now should be process of elimination. The height of the plant was the dependent variable. That's what we are measuring. The different types of soil was the independent variable. That's the factor that scientists are manipulating or putting into categories. So the last thing left is the water and the sunlight. Very good. Everybody got it right. Everybody that answered got it right. And it says right there, gives them the same amount of water and sunlight. Not all of your examples will be this easy, but we're starting off because you guys are just learning these terms. All right. So water and sunlight are the controlled variables or the constants. You can call them either thing and then they will both be correct. All right, we have another practice. Make sure you're writing these down with the correct answers, because a lot of you are getting points taken off because you're not writing the full set of notes, which include all the things we discuss. So scientists study different breeds of rose bushes to see if there's a difference in the number of flowers that can be grown. All of the flowers are kept in a greenhouse under the same conditions. So see if you can pick them out. What is the dependent variable? Write them out, write them in your notes. See if you get them right. What is the dependent variable? What is being measured? What is the independent variable? What is different about the categories or groups? And then what is the controlled variable? What stays the same? Do one more poll. The poll has 3 questions for the 3 variables. So let's see how you guys do. You got different breeds of rose bushes, the number of flowers on the rose bush, and the greenhouse conditions. Which one is the dependent variable? Which one is the independent variable? Which one is the constant or controlled variables? And it's okay if you don't get these right now. I can't see who's answering what. I'm not grading you on this. You're checking yourself, seeing if you understand these concepts. I'm going to give you about 30 more seconds. Naved, yes, there should be a poll or a survey. If it's not popping up for you, that's okay. We'll talk about it in a minute. It should just pop up on your screen. If you can't get the poll, that's okay. We'll talk about it in a minute, but you guys still need to write down your answers in your notes. What is the dependent variable? What is the independent variable? What is the controlled variable? All right. So the results, the dependent variable The thing that is also being measured is the number of flowers on the rose bush. Most of you got that right. Good. Number 2, what is the independent variable? The thing being compared or put into categories, it's the different breeds of rose bushes. And then the controlled variables, most of you got that one right, are the greenhouse conditions. They kept in the greenhouse under the same conditions. Very good. All right, you got one more practice, and this is for you guys. So we did 2 practice questions together. I want you to do this one by yourself and write it in your notes. Make sure it's there, because I will be looking and reading and grading your notes to see if everything is there.